I'm Connor and welcome back to this month's episode of Masters of Controlled Chaos. And this week we're going to be looking at one of the most sort of notoriously cult figures, I guess you would say, in all of Hollywood. A filmmaker that has been making great movies for decades. I'm talking about Sam Raimi. So if you're new to this series, what I do every single month is I do a big, long breakdown of a filmmaker. And I really talk about the central idea of what makes them great. And then I also talk about 3 movies that I think really feel define their career. These are all masters of controlled chaos, people that are great directors, people that can really gather a group and make great movies over and over again for years to come. And this series really excited me because I've had a personal connection to Sam Raimi because, of course, I grew up with the Spider-Man films. Those are really seminal films in sort of my childhood, and films I still really enjoy today. Yeah, I had not really seen a lot of his more cultish films that have now become probably less cult and now more mainstream. Your early on Evil Deads, and even some of his later films like Oz and whatnot. So it was very exciting to sort of explore his career, knowing parts of it, but not knowing the whole story of it. And I was very, very surprised and delightfully surprised. I really enjoyed making this episode. So really, after seeing all of his films and going through and rewatching them, what I really thought that what makes him great is there are a lot of things. It's that it's really easy actually seeing his career progression in this sort of linear sense, watching his very first movie, which I know before Evil Dead he didn't make a movie. I couldn't find that one. That one's hard to track down. But I watched the Evil Dead onwards, and you can really see him being these sort of small, independent sort of roots with not a lot of budget, and then him now going to Oz, which is this huge, large budget, his most previous film. And you can really see the progression of his career in the sense that you can see how he learns some of these techniques and then sort of employs them and really perfects them over the course of his films. But really what I appreciated about his movies, and what I think a large part of what makes him great and unique and special within the filmmaking landscape, of course there's so many different types of movies, is that he takes a movie that has sort of a ridiculous premise and then brings seriousness to it. He embraces the silliness, but he also brings a seriousness to the silliness and the absurd that hasn't really maybe got the seriousness it deserved before. If you just sort of name off some of the plots of some of his movies, a man gets bit by a spider and gets spider powers and runs around the city fighting crime in a suit. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. Or a man from a modern man, or I guess in the 30s, crash lands into a fantastical world with talking animals. That's so sort of ridiculous. But he's able to find the charm of that sort of silliness, and we realize that this is, fantastical and a story, but he also takes a seriousness to those subjects. Things like horse, things like the superhero genre actually take up a large portion of his career. He really takes a seriousness to the kind of filmmaking, and he's not making films that aren't necessarily not fun. He's not trying to explore the thematic issues in a lot of his, say Evil Dead movies. That's sort of a serious highbrow sense. But what he does is he employs all the craftsmanship that it really deserves. He's not one that's sort of decided to make those Evil Dead movies for a quick buck, and they're semi-scary and has some effects, but it's a lot of people just talking. There's not necessarily a huge amount of themes there, but for something like the Evil Dead, that's just really pure entertainment in a lot of sense. And in a lot of times in those films, in a lot of his films, he uses these sort of grandiose camera techniques and push-ins and tracking shots, but they're all used. In some places, it's funny, and you can we understand sort of the comedic elements of it. But also, he really embraces the heroism in a lot of his films, and even the destruction of the heroism in some of his, I would say, late '90s, mid 2000s kind of movies. But also, like many great directors, he has trademarks. One of his trademarks is, like I said, heightened camera movements. He has often crash zooms where, there's a quick zoom right into a person's face. He also uses extreme close-ups many times, getting right into the actor's face. And then he also sort of established this shot. I could always sort of established it as the Evil Dead shot. So that's where I first saw it, and I think he sort of patented it and invented it, where he takes a 2x4 and puts a camera on it and then runs in the woods with it. So it's not, a really sort of fluid motion. It's not the incredible shaky cam if you had it in your arms. There's a sort of stability to it, but it's still sort of wobbly. It's a really sort of unique shot, and he often uses it to represent the dead, even in Evil Dead and many of his other films. And that's why I said at the top of the show, he uses that technique and then sort of uses it for comedic effect in something like Evil Dead 2, but then uses it in other ways later on. In his filmography, and has sort of learned from that, but that's sort of an establishing unique shot that he developed. Another thing he also uses, especially in Evil Dead, less so maybe in his later movies, is the Dutch angles. Things are, if you don't know what Dutch angle is, when the camera is sort of tilted, so it's off kilter. So what this does is create an effect of disorientation or confusion. But the thing is really, there's so many different types of camera movements, but a great filmmaker either invents his own or uses those camera movements in a sort of unique way. So when the sort of camera is spinning and just going in really close right to someone's face, or it's shaking but it's moving, or they're doing a Dutch angle really up close to his face, it creates sort of a heightened realism, which has always been in his films. His worlds are never realistic in the true sense of the word. I think that they're much more heightened, realistic sort of movies. So I think that those camera moves really affect that. They're always sort of the reality, but there's always something different. There's always a little bit of aspect to it. There's always. I just think that there's seriousness that's taken to them. Spider-Man, it's a superhero movie, yes, but definitely confronts the issues of and responsibilities of being a hero. Oz looks at sort of losing your ego and building trust. I mean, there are some themes here, but they are all still in heightened worlds, which is important. I think that he's not necessarily trying to go for realism, and therefore his Dutch angles are not sort of distracting in a lot of ways. They're sort of cinematic and different and unique and always engaging. I think that's something that you could never say about Sam Raimi movies. That's never really sort of engaging and doesn't sort of move along, which I think they normally do. Another thing that he likes to do is play with tones throughout the film. We're going to talk a little bit about horror comedy later, but he often mixes horror and comedy in the Spider-Man movies. I think he mixes sort of comedy and drama, where things are sort of like half funny. Or even in A Simple Plan, there's some great tense scenes where you're totally relaxed, nothing's going on, and then in an instant he sort of turns that and it becomes incredibly thrilling and intense. So even without sort of, he doesn't have a filmography where he does different types of genres, something like a Stanley Kubrick or a Rob Reiner necessarily, but he plays with different tones. He's done a comedy before, he's done a horror, he's done a drama, he's done a thriller, he's done a sports movie. I mean, he has sort of extended himself, and you really don't know what direction he's going to go next, which I think is very interesting for his future projects, which he hasn't done a lot since, hasn't done anything since 2013, so we're going to be still sort of interested in seeing where he goes next in that sense. I would think that some of the tones of his movies, sometimes one leans horror, or one leans comedy, but that's also personal preference in a lot of ways, and I still definitely plays with those tones throughout the film. He also knows how to great performances. This is something I noticed while watching his films that maybe is less talked about within Sam Raimi's career, but I think you have to give this sort of a credit to the director, because all the performances are really well done in all of his movies, because he's able to convey what he wants out of his actors and really can make sure that they know what kind of movie they're in and get the complete picture. Because I'm thinking about Cate Blanchett in The Gift, or Billy Bob Thornton and Bill Paxton in A Simple Plan, or Bruce Campbell in Evil Dead. I mean, I think these are really perfectly cast roles, but also perfectly performed roles, and no one ever feels like, oh, he's out of the movie. He doesn't get what kind of movie he is. Everyone there knows and understands what kind of movie they're in, which I think is really admirable, and therefore leads to, in a lot of ways, great performances. And then another thing I noticed, maybe because I'm a big fan of the Coen brothers, and that he's friends with the Coen brothers, one sort of similar you can sort of nail between some of their filmography. Of course, they did work together on Crime Wave, but throughout their filmography, I think one thing that you can nail is the idea of sort of Old Testament morals. The idea that there are rules, and if you don't follow them, you'll be punished. Even something like Driving Me to Hell, she tries to do sort of a good thing for her boss and be mean and foreclose on this gypsy. And then, of course, the old world sort of comes back and the universe dooms her in a lot of sense. And I think the Coens are much more religious in that sense, and God and morality, and based off the Jewish faith. But I think Sam Raimi is much more interested almost in the supernatural and the universe and the way of the world. And if these ghosts have been living here for millions of years, that they know it. And if you sort of don't follow it, or you don't follow the rules of the dead, you have to say the phrase, like in Army of Darkness, exactly how it is, or else, there are rules and you have to follow them, which creates a unique universe, I think, which I really appreciated. Okay, let's transition into my first movie of the 3 movies I'm going to be talking about, which is The Evil Dead 2. So, Evil Dead 2, why I chose this movie is because I thought that, before I even knew about Sam Raimi, I knew him as the Evil Dead guy. I knew him as sort of one of the great horror movie directors, and for me, he was a horror guy, and I was just never a horror guy. So I knew that, going into his films, that I'd liked Spider-Man 2 and A Simple Plan, so I knew he was a talented filmmaker, so I was really excited to check out his filmography because I had seen a lot of it, and I knew that I had to get one of his sort of seminal trilogy of films onto the list, and after careful consideration, I went with Evil Dead 2 because I felt like it is one of the perfect horror comedies in that sense, and one of the best of the genre, because it really understands, in my opinion, the sort of effects and the uses of the horror comedy. What it does is, I think a lot of the cool distinction is that it finds horror within the it sort of finds comedy within the horror, in a lot of ways, it is a film that, is scary at times and comedic at times, and sometimes it does that both. And now, in a lot of ways, this is not the first horror comedy. This is often attributed to something like Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Even 6 years later, there was An American Werewolf in London. But what I think is different about this film than those films is that those films definitely rely on having comedic characters in horror situations, in scary situations. Abbott and Costello are funny, and then they meet Frankenstein, who is scary. But I think that the Evil Dead is different because I think it defines what I can now consider horror comedy, because there's often scenarios where it's funny and then the way Sam Raimi sort of changes a couple things, therefore makes it funny. I think that it's also really a great example of a meta horror movie in that sense, and sort of a meta comedy, because of it's essentially a remake of the first one. It definitely plays more to sort of my generation's appeals in terms of comedy in that sense, because it almost could be seen as a parody film where it knows it's a remake of the first film, but it just changes a couple things, and it's a completely different new experience, and it knows that and sort of makes fun of all those horror tropes. But yet I still consider it a horror movie because it still has these really scary moments. And the example I like to use is if a man tries to come at you with a knife and tries to kill you, that's infinitely more scary because there's a threat. You understand that this man can kill you with this knife. But if a man tried to come at you and try to kill you with a spoon, whatever, you'd laugh and sort of joke it off, and because the threat's not realistic, you can't kill you with a spoon. But after a while, if you kept on doing it for hours and hours and hours, you would break skin and there would be blood, and then all of a sudden you go, what? And you'd understand the threat, and therefore you become more scared because this man's trying to kill you still. And he's become successful. The threat has now become realized. So that's why I think that the distinction is, and there's great, and sort of that scenario is greatly shown and demonstrated through the I guess hand scene you'd call it in this movie, where Bruce Campbell's hand gets affected by the dead. And now he's trying to kill him. So at first glance, it's okay. It's just his hand. He can keep control of it. It's not going to kill him. It's sort of a joking force. But then when it actually becomes successful and almost about to kills him, that's a really tense, scary moment because it's, oh my God, it's about to kill him. It's actually trying to get to him. And then, of course, what happens is he saws off his hand with a chainsaw. And then we don't see it, and there's blood spurting in his face, and we go to extreme close-up as Sam pushes in, and we see Ash's face, and he's smiling and grinning from ear to ear. That is the total, opposite sort of effect. In film, the effect is, you can almost apply it to the Kuleshov effect. There was a study by a Russian filmmaker where he showed a reaction shot of a man with a blank face, and then showed the audience another shot of food, and then he did it with multiple types of experiences, showing food, then showing the man's face, or showing a picture of a spider and then the man's face, and then he would write how people's reactions were, and people oftentimes projected how he was feeling despite that man's face being the same shot, of just sort of this blankness. If they showed the food, he would be hungry. If they showed the spider, that he was scared. So in this way, a lot of times it's the reaction shots of the film that makes it different, and makes it sort of comedic. I think, in this scenario, when we can see something really scary, and if we show a girl or a guy and they're really subtle and they're totally freaked out and they're really shrieking, that could instantly sort of trigger something to our brains, like, oh, this is supposed to be scary. And if it's not scary, then you maybe sort of knock it down a couple pegs. Oh, I didn't find that scary because it's trying to be scary. But when we see Bruce Campbell's reaction and he's wide-eyed, open mouth, yelling, and it's completely 2-3 times over the top, clearly, at least I think, and not sort of satirizing it, but sort of becoming so over the top that he's so scared that it becomes funny when you realize, oh, sometimes it's not that. Or even he looks back at him and he gives a great sort of one-line or whatever, groovy, or something like that. We know sort of what kind of a movie this is, because how sort of fun and funny it is. And then also I think that the chainsaw sequence, for example, where where he looks at the wall and there's a chainsaw missing, that in that horror movie that can easily be played as he doesn't have his weapon anymore, the dead are coming after him, they're going to kill him, this is a tense moment. But then what happens immediately is Raimi cuts, and there's of course his dead girlfriend, who's now without a head and is wielding the chainsaw and running at him full speed, and sort of swinging it and doing a great physical comedy. That really adds to it. There's the comedy is within the horror itself. There's a great, crazy, gross special effects, but then some people will see that as scary. Some people will see that just as really cool. It depends on how you sort of look at it. And then also, Ash and Bruce Campbell did a lot of great physical comedy that adds to the effect of his movements and how even the dead move and how it's shown. All those things add to the overall effect. And I also think that this movie has a certain feel to it, and another aspect that's hard to explain, because I'll give this example. Back to the Future, for example, is a film that I can definitely feel was shot on a Hollywood backlot. I don't believe it's a realistic school, I don't have to. It just feels like a great sort of Hollywood magic movie, with a sort of rousing score, and it's overly optimistic, but that's what I sort of love about it. But Evil Dead, you can feel this is sort of an independent movie, a little bit more raw, a little bit grittier, a little bit more freehand, and you can feel that there's a bunch of group of friends that want to make a fun horror movie and went to a cabin, and sort of their passion and their love bled onto the screen, and that's what I really appreciate about it. Okay, so now moving to the next movie we're going to talk about, Darkman. This one is definitely a personal pick, as I could have easily chosen one of Sam Raimi's arguably better films. Drag Me to Hell is a great horror movie. A Simple Plan is like a really incredible, tight thriller with some great ethical, moral questions I almost chose. But I went with Darkman because I feel like this, for me, is kind of a quintessential Sam Raimi film, and I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it, because a lot of his film, like I said at the top of the show, is comprised of superhero movies and horror movies. This one kind of blends the two. They're very much inspired by sort of Universal 30s monster movies, but very much feels like the Batman sort of pulpiness of the era. You can really feel that sort of superhero aspects to it, and Raimi's sort of love of the horror and sort of the darkness of it. That this being his very first studio movie, he uses those grand set pieces, and this being most of the formula for Spider-Man later on. And it's actually kind of unique to see, because it's it's a revenge movie essentially, starring Liam Neeson, post or pre-Taken. So before Taken even happened, he's in this sort of superhero movie where he's taking revenge, and we never thought that would be a good idea, but maybe, who knows, the director of Taken saw Darkman and was like, oh, this is the guy. That being said, though, what I really appreciate about the film is that it's complete, like I said, commitment to tone and the pulpy nature of it. Unlike sort of Evil Dead, where the sort of overreactions and over-dramatized are used for sort of comedic effect, this one I think is very much used for a dramatic effect, in that Sam Raimi really leans into the tragedy of this character, of this guy that didn't really do anything wrong because of sort of an unfortunate situation, gets half his face burned off, and he becomes a different man, and he can't find the woman who he loves, but has to wear these masks this entire time and to try to conceal his identity. He really understands the idea of the mask and sort of it versus sort of the human that he really is, and tries to be. He employs some great set pieces with using the different kinds of masks that you can see, sort of Mission Impossible masks throughout the film, and uses it in really clever ways, and I think elevates this material more than it ever deserves to be. There's some really great action, some really beautiful shots and transitions, and it feels like a comic book on screen. I'm not a huge comic book reader, but what I have read, and sort of what I feel like comic books has a certain dynamic nature, that Spider-Man can swing from one frame of a comic book to the next, and sometimes there's blown up frames, and these ones have sort of these different moments where Dark Man is sort of running through the streets, and then you go to the next frame and he's gone and he's nowhere to be found. And you can easily do that in the comic book, obviously, because you just don't draw it, but in the film you have to be a little bit more creative. And I think that this film definitely shows his sensibilities and his respect and control of his craft. I talked about before performances. One of my favorite performances in all his movies is Larry Clark, who plays one of sort of the mean mafioso bad guys here. There's a great scene where he's got one of those cigar sort of cutters, and then he goes up and tries to and uses it as a sort of a torture device, which is really brilliant. And he's kind of over the top, and he's grimacing, and he's got the sort of the evil sort of smile to him, but he sort of knows that, and plays it with real brilliant charm and sophistication. And he's not, Heath Ledger Joker. He's not completely going into it. It's not a serious movie. He understands and sort of doesn't wink at the audience, but he has sort of the tongue firmly planted in the cheek and understands, how he's delivering the lines. Plays within this world, and everything feels believable. And once you're in this world, you're like, okay, this is the world I'm in. It's very one-dimensional. There's good and there's evil. It's very cruel, but there's this man, this glimmer of hope that's about to save it, and everything that they're going to say is going to be evil because these guys are evil, and whoever the good guy is going to say is something good, and he's going to have his own sort of melodramatic sort of troubles to it. And just because it's sort of melodramatic doesn't mean that's necessarily bad. It's just a style of filmmaking, and this is a film that's short, an hour 30 minutes. You can get in, watch it, have a great time, bounce, and just appreciate sort of the visuals, the unique comedic set pieces, and great action set pieces. Some of the effects don't hold up as well necessarily. That could be one elevated, but I think that really it's just the visual look of a comic book and the feel that I think Raimi completely understands and brings that seriousness to it, and brings these legitimately great action set pieces and sequences that are tense and fun and thrilling and entertain you. So this is definitely a high recommend for me, just because of how much fun I had with the film. Okay, now talking about my last movie, which is going to be Spider-Man 2. So Spider-Man 2, in my opinion, a great capital S superhero movie because of its total commitment to the superhero and the hero and the main protagonist, which in a lot of ways you may be thinking, oh, that's kind of odd. Is this one of the best superhero movies of all time? Maybe, but it's that because of its commitment to the hero, despite a lot of the great superhero movies not doing that. You think, oh, I like Batman movies, I like Iron Man movies, like Captain America movies, I like Wolverine movies. But if you think about a lot of those movies, a lot of times the appeal isn't even the hero himself. I think, for example, Batman, one of the best superhero movies of all time, sort of seen unanimously, is The Dark Knight. But a lot of times the star of that movie is not Batman. Batman Begins is a Batman movie. Dark Knight is very much a Joker movie. He's almost on screen as much as Batman. He dominates every scene. It's about him and his relationship to Batman, and sort of his sort of craziness that he employs to the city. Well, that's the aspect of that character. Even something like Black Panther. When I think of that movie, who do I like? I like Killmonger. I like Shuri. I like M'Baku. Black Panther himself, T'Challa, really is kind of aggressively uncharismatic, and it's a supporting cast. Andy Serkis's character really just bring so much life and joy and feel to that movie. It's not really Black Panther's movie, and I'm not that interested in Black Panther. But Spider-Man 2, he does have a great villain in Alfred Molina playing the great Doc Ock. And there's some great action sequences, especially near the end of the film with that, but I guess I forgot how much sidelined he really is, and we're not really constantly cutting back to him. It's not sort of that 1-2 punch. It's really sort of a large portion of the film exploring just Peter Parker. The film does the traditional thing of taking a superhero and essentially stripping away all of his powers and seeing if there's really a hero beneath all of his powers. But really, I think that. I personally really enjoy the first Spider-Man, but this one and the second one you can definitely see as parallels in they're sort of very much over obvious and heavy-handed in a lot of sense metaphors for Peter's life at the time. The first one very much is a high school movie, and all the, sort of he transforms into being a Spider-Man, and becomes all the strength and these all these things and hair, and clearly that's a puberty reference. But then even I would say Spider-Man 2 I think is actually a great college movie. Is where everything in his life is just coming down on top of him. He's in college, he's getting a job, he has an apartment, he has to support Aunt May. He's trying to be Spider-Man as well, and there's just so many things that are piling on top of him, and he can't do it all at once. And then he sort of realizes that, you have to realize that he didn't choose to be Spider-Man, that he was told almost to be Spider-Man. He had these powers, and then now he's Spider-Man. He has to sort of keep this burden. And because he decided to start fighting crime, that now he can't just go away. But yet in the film, he does. And there's some really great sort of comedic moments that show sort of Sam Raimi's comedic style. There's two montage sequences that are a lot of fun and funny, but really sort of do a great job emphasizing the fact that in this entire movie Peter Parker's getting really thrown down and beaten up. His best friend, his love interest MJ, really just gets mad about everything. His Aunt May even isn't there really to support him. Harry, of course, his best friend, doesn't like him anymore. There's no one really on his side. Yet, it's all about him realizing sort of what it means to be a hero, and deciding ultimately to choose to do that, to understand the consequences, and to feel like this is a real life path. And I think that's really a brilliant sort of way, because it deconstructs the idea of what it means to be a hero. The entire film, they're just crapping on Tobey Maguire and Peter Parker as a character, because he's always late to class, he never shows up to anything, he can't balance this sort of life. And ultimately he has to sort of choose something, and he realizes that Spider-Man is the result of all his things. But then there's this great sort of intimate character sort of study, because this is a piece of him that the public needs. He's really in love with this girl, and he likes his life, and he just wants to fix that first and have a great foundation. He feels like he's all over the place, and he's never really with that one person. And there's all these small, great, intimate moments, like those sort of moments, those sequences I talk about, those montage sequences. There's a great sort of sequence with chocolate cake that I really enjoyed, that really emphasized the central theme of what I think of just, the consequences and the right of being a hero. Like, there's a great moment of chocolate cake where sort of one of Peter's crushes offers him chocolate cake, and there's so many different ways you can read and interpret that scene into being really whatever you want. I sort of see it as a scene where he finally gets cracked on sort of the whole movie, and he finally has a chance to stop and think and relate and sort of think about what to do next, and have a sort of a nice moment for the very first time. And an hour and a half into the film, just being beat upon by all of his friends and family. But also it's a time where you can reflect of maybe is this the life he wants? Does he want sort of a simple life where he just can eat cake and be a professor and be a scientist, or is there something else? Because I sort of think that the interesting part about this film is that it has great sort of action sequences, but there's a real heart and real complex that Peter has to face here. Is Spider-Man really worth it, or can he even ask him that question at all, because he has to have that sort of responsibility to the city? Or is it not his responsibility at all? He has these powers, but that doesn't mean he necessarily should choose to be them. But he still is a beacon of hope, and it really is a superhero movie tackling, trying to figure out the theme of heroism and that aspect. But on top of that, there's also some really great action sequences. The train sequence is really intense and thrilling, and there's so many different elements to it. I mean, the CGI, first of all, holds up great. Doc Ock's arms and the action that goes through it there are really seamless and feel great. And him even swinging throughout the city, and sort of the momentum that Sam Raimi is able to bring as sort of he moves along the city is really incredible and so exhilarating. And in that train sequence, also another aspect is the idea of New York and the people of New York really gathering around Peter and feeling like they're, just much as part of the fight as Peter is, and that's a sort of essential element to the story as well. So I think that, it's a great sort of college movie in the sense that, there's so many different things that are on his plate, and he can't sort of juggle them all, and he has to decide sort of what he wants to do with his life and sort of the certain parts of him and his romantic relationships and his friend relationships, and trying to still relate to someone who he's moved out of, and he's still not living with Aunt May, so he can't see her all the time, but this film still has really great heartbreaking scenes, some really intense scenes. There's still a romantic kind of struggle. If he wants to be MJ's sort of girlfriend and she wants to be him, and there's definitely love there, but it's heartbreaking, it's tragic because he's Spider-Man and he doesn't want to subject her to that. But then, she sort of becomes, at the end, she sort of realizes that she does want that. It's her choice, and she decides to choose it. Yet on the very last frame of the movie, we see her, and you can read it in so many different ways. But I think the film is trying to say, oh, I'm sort of alone now. Maybe this is not what I wanted. Maybe I didn't realize how hard this is going to be, seeing him just go out and potentially die every day. And that's like a certain aspect of the film that I thought was like really interesting, because it's more than just sort of has great action sequences, but it also has these great intimate character moments of relationships that I think build it above that. And my God, I haven't really even talked about Alfred Molina as Doc Ock, as sort of a villain who's a realistic villain, because he's just idealized of perfection. His ego has gotten so big, something that's of course the complete opposite of Peter. Peter's also trying to find a perfect life balance, but then like Doc Ock is, but Doc Ock sort of becomes so committed to one thing that he puts up his blinders and risks everything, but whereas Peter, of course, he's a hero, so that he's able to realize, the idea of, prioritization, kind of silly as it is, but really choosing the things in your life and making these sacrifices, which is, the idea of sacrifice, the idea of being a hero. There's all these ideas baked into this film that are immensely rewatchable, and that's why I think I kind of like it a little bit more than the first. While the first has these great iconic moments, these ones have, I think, a better CGI, a less cartoonish villain, and greater stakes to the entire city and of Peter Parker's inner world. Of course, written by Alvin Sargent, who recently passed away, so rest in peace. Phenomenal screenplay and a really great movie. That's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I'm thinking about doing a couple of filmmakers. I'm not sure about next week. Yesterday we did Bound for Glory, which was Hal Ashby, so maybe I'll do a Hal Ashby series next month. Maybe I'll do Spike Lee. That's on the timetable. Miyazaki. Let me know in the comments down below what kind of filmmaker you'd like to see. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and until next month, stay tuned.